what do you like to do?
Oh, I don't know. Play chess. Screw.
Well, let's play chess.
Richardson gonna take off and run. He's in there! Touchdown! I-N-D-Y! Outside give to Taylor. Stretching it out. He's at the 5, and he walks in untouched. Jonathan Taylor. Turner wants to do more damage, and he does.
Here's Halliburton into the front court. Mishandled it, but gets a shot. Hits it! Hits it!
John, I have never been better to be on the air with you here in Indianapolis, a place where so many of my dreams have come true.
The Ride with JMV on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Ballard with the media a little bit earlier today. It was really, I don't think, anything new. Samuel Womack is the guy they brought in at corner now as a part of a waiver wire pick they actually got awarded. And Darrell Baker Jr., a corner, ends up getting waived. Today we'll talk about that. Kevin Bowen's going to join us coming up in the 4 o'clock hour. I have mentioned this before, and you know where I am. And I'm not going to sit here every day and be after somebody's job, to be after somebody's gig, but I think you know where I have been, certainly in recent history, regarding Chris Ballard and the time spent here and the results, lack thereof, no matter the situation, what you've had to go through. And I've said this before, even guys in that position, general managers, team presidents, even guys that have had either the ultimate or a very high level of success and results, to squeeze 8 years out of a career anywhere in the NFL is incredible. But especially that of, in this case, the general manager. And a lot of you are asking about, because everybody's concerned about the secondary, and if there is a concern, you should. Now, my concern is the fact that you look at the depth, which is always necessary with this team because everybody always gets injured with this team. But it is more the depth. But I understand if you're going, hey, last time out we saw this group, they were getting worked over by one dude. Actually, two if you count C.J. Stroud, who was throwing the football. Now, if you remember, the counter a couple of weeks ago with Chris Ballard on with us was, hey, you know, that was a first big play, which you can't have, but he was softening the blow for the secondary and blaming more of the overall defense. I don't know if that meant Gus Bradley at the time or not, which you and I both, I think, thought about when he was saying it, just not saying it out loud. But we all watched how they went down the tubes in the fashion in which they did with that opportunity at home. As good an opportunity as you're going to have a year ago. Yeah, to win the division for the first time since 2014, to make the postseason, and, you know, to get clowns like me off your ass. To get guys like me that don't know anything from anything to shut up and say, hey, look what they've done now. And as we sit here, we're still unable to do that. What I did mention to you, and whether or not it's just how he handles himself, you know, maybe the guy is Rounders-esque. Maybe he's like Matt Damon in Rounders. Maybe he's a really good poker player. Maybe he doesn't show a lot. He just, regardless of the situation, he just center cuts the bravado like he has a resume that describes that. A couple of things, and I'll get to it, and I'll move on. We got a busy guest list today. But what's interesting to me is when I talked to him 2 weeks ago, I did not gather whatsoever, and a lot of you agreed with me that he had a care in the world, because if you remember at the end of that conversation, I said, this is going into year number 8. You got a lack of results, and I sit here all the time and go, what in the world are we doing? Why are you still going in this direction? You know, where is the pressure now compared to the past? And I didn't want to bring up hot seat or anything like that. I just framed it up as, all right, you're going into year number 8 and little to no results. Where do you feel the pressure of making this season the best that you have had? And he basically described it as, hey, I'm not overly sensitive. I understand what you guys have to do. You guys have to say what you guys have to say, but I believe in what I'm doing. I believe in what we're doing. I believe in this product, and I believe this is going to be the year. Well, at some point, it needs to be the year. You would think it has to be the year. But even with that, it would suggest to you that maybe you're just saying something for the sake of saying something. But as it stood out to me on that particular afternoon in Westfield, I thought, this dude's not worried about anything. He is not worried about anything. Normally, when you're worried, you would say, why don't you shut up? You don't know anything from anything, and you yap in the afternoon like you know something. You couldn't last 5 minutes in my world, or what? I mean, he could have said that. And he calmly acted as if he didn't have a care in the world. There was zero pressure. Like it was like, you're number one. Year number 2 of a new regime, of a rebuild. That's what it felt like. And then ever since, when people ask me, so what do you think this thing is going? I think this thing is going and going to continue down this path until further notice. And I thought at the time what he was saying was the truth. And I think to be that comfortable, and for it not to be a facade, or not to be, a sandbagging technique where you're yakking up some dude on the air here. I think he knows. I think he knows where he is. I think he knows he has time. I think that's one of the reasons why. Part of it is he just believes the decisions he's making is smarter than everybody else's, and that can be dangerous territory. There's a dude that used to work here that we know very well, and one of the things that he said and referenced, and I always felt this was about as accurate, and I'm sorry, the dude that used to work here sounds lame, I understand. But he used to say, you got to know what you don't know. And this goes way back even before he started radio and was doing, basketball, head coach at Bowen Green or whatever. And I always took that to heart because me, I don't know very much. And I thought, well, hell, then I don't know. That made me feel better. I thought, okay, I know a hell of a lot of what I don't know because, frankly, I don't know very much. I keep what I know to a bare minimum. And Ballard's not that way. He firmly believes that the decisions that he's making are smarter and more savvy and more sound and more accurate than everybody else. And I think that he will sail this thing to the very end believing just that. Somebody had asked yesterday, so 3 late-round draft selections this year, 3 late-round draft selections last year. And 6 of these dudes got cut. What do you make of that? Well, you can look at it 2 different ways. You can look at it as, how often guys like that don't make it, but you have to hold on for a minute in terms of Chris because that's supposedly where he really makes his mark. So for those that are suggesting that's not a big deal because it's a late rounder, we're all the time talking about how useful all these picks are. Every last pick this and last pick that, and high value. That's why you believe in yourself and believe in what you're drafting and keep what you're drafting around. All that stuff that we've heard year after year. So, yeah, when it doesn't work out, then you're going to be on the hook for that. People are going to say, hey, you believe in yourself, and then in this, 6 out of the last 2 years, late round or not, they're not a part of this organization. That's not a good thing, and you have every right to say that. You do. And at this point, unless it's really stupid, you have every right to say whatever you want because you have bought into this, you have heard this, listened to this, digested all of it with little to no results. So it's not like anybody is proving you wrong. It's not like anybody's proving me wrong. We await that. And believe me, I think we all will welcome that in. We'll put the welcome mat down for us being proven wrong, but it just hasn't been the case. Hasn't been the case yet. And when people ask me about, so is this going to be it? What's Jim Irsay going to do if this thing? And I think Mike Chappell and I even got into this debate last week. I know Bob Kravitz and I did on Monday afternoon. I just don't see it. I do not see it. In the state of the Colts right now, I still think what Jim Irsay said to Greg Rakestraw and Rick Venturi during preseason game 2 when he was up in the booth, he's still, and this is not a good thing. You can tell, I get a promo that's running where I mentioned he's still trying to sell you on the general manager. He's still trying to sell you on that blue chip general manager. And I don't know altogether if he completely believes in what he is saying, but he is comfortable in what he is saying. And he is comfortable in this position, and that's why all of a sudden now people are questioning his desire. Just how much he wants to win. Now, we've brought up with Mike Chappell a number of times where, hey, I'll sign any check. It doesn't matter. We'll do it. And the more and more the last couple of years have gone on, especially after the disaster of 2022, the more you kind of hear. And again, it's nothing concrete, but the more that you hear, you ask questions about, just how focused winning is right now, because there's a lot of other stuff going on in that world. There's the health and well-being of the owner. There's trying to work your way back from just what was an awful health situation of a year ago. And then there's going to be at some point moving forward. And, handing over the organization, then ultimately for those that are going to be a part of the inheritance, So these are all valid questions. And these are all valid questions that you have when your team is in a situation like this team is presently in. And as I told you 2 weeks ago, I didn't think Chris Ballard had a great deal of pressure. I think that's why that he feels comfortable in playing a lot of young guys that are very unproven, other than a couple on that secondary, where most of you disapprove about the tact and the path in which they're taking right now. Chris Ballard stands firm in it. And I would like to sit here and say, well, you know what, and shake my fist. That better work or else. I don't think there's an or else here. I think there's a reason why he's comfortable. And again, I don't know how you should respond to it. I certainly don't know how you should respond to it because the season has yet to start. Then we'll be able to do the math more accurately. But as of right now, I don't know how you respond to it. I guess you just got to see what happens. When I said reboot this past year, that's exactly what it is. It is a reboot. But getting back to what he had said in the booth, I think he's still trying to sell you, the audience, the Colts fan, on his belief in what should be your belief in Ballard. I truly think that he believes Shane Steichen is Shula-esque. Like what he described Shane Steichen, I think, as Don Shula. I think he does firmly believe that. But I think just because of the lack of results, he is still trying to sell you on that. Full well knowing that the general manager is moving forward with a reason why he feels confident in going a direction in which not a lot of people other than those around him in that organization believe in right now, especially in that secondary. Like people had sent me videos and what memes or GIFs or whatever the hell they are. We're going to the Texans rejoicing about getting a chance of getting a shot. I don't know, unless Samuel Womack comes in here and he's like, Darrelle Revis or something, Darrelle Revis. But I think he's firmly confident, and I don't think he has a care in the world pressure-wise that a lot of you believe. And I mean, a lot that cover the team believe that he has right now. And there's a reason why he can speak so confidently about it today. Hey, you know what? We tried some things, and it didn't work. And that's okay, but at some point it has to. This all revolves around one thing. At some point, something has to work. At some point, you're going to get sick and tired of hearing about, well, we tried for that, but it's a swing and a miss. Yeah, we tried for that guy, and it didn't work out. Well, make it work. You're supposed to be blue chip, one of the best out there. Make this stinking work. Bring in what is necessary. And then what you do is you kind of pull the rug out from under the argument of having so much trust when you mention the fact that, hey, we went out there and some things didn't work. Maybe you go hard after Snead. He ends up in Tennessee, but it didn't work out. And what happens is then you try to sell everybody around here that take issue with the secondary of, hey, I believe in it. Well, you didn't believe in it back in the offseason when you tried to bring in one of the better guys at cornerback in the NFL. So it gets all kind of tied up a little bit. But it was interesting to hear his answers to the question. And my friends, that is a guy, like it or not, that is a guy that is very comfortable where he is. And as I have just discussed, there is a reason behind that. We can discuss at 239-1070 if you so desire. Hey, again, this could all be wiped away if they go out and win and look good, and then you can all say, see, I told you, jackass, you had no idea what you were talking about. People out there that get mad about your reference, 6 late-round selections in the last 2 years that don't make it, and that's, where you try to make your mark, whatever. But I'll take that on. I will take that on because it is much better. The alternative of getting a product in here that you really get excited about and has consistent winning potential will certainly outweigh any I told you so's. I would have to assume that anybody in this position, anybody out there that covers this team, would feel in similar fashion. But in terms of knowing what you don't know, it is a my way or the highway type of thing. And there is still, after 7+ years now, firm belief in how you build, how you put together, and what you believe the end result to be. Even if a majority like you out there, like me sitting right here, don't believe in it right now because we have not a lot of reason to believe. All right, 239-1070. If you guys want to call in, you certainly can. AAA Membership Lounge, that is via YouTube Live. We would love to see you there. I know the conversation's going on. They had hemorrhoid conversation in there yesterday with Preparation H. All right, then. Yeah, I'm sorry I missed that. AAA membership, by the way, too. Labor Day weekend is really important. Don't get stranded without somebody having your back on the roads. And know this, that AAA, much more than just making sure that you're comfortable and somebody has your back when you're driving around. There's a lot of other things, including travel, so on and so forth. AAA membership, become a member today. I was out at Ruoff on Monday night for Pearl Jam, and they had a booth out there. I saw Terry. Terry was talking about how many of you came over. Listeners to the show decided to sign up. It is a good thing. Thought about some ideas for this show in the future at Ruoff, which also is a great idea. Is it hot in here? Because I'm sweaty. Why am I sweaty? I don't normally sweat in here, James. I feel sweaty. And I've got the world's biggest V-neck rocking right now. I mean, hell, I'm almost shirtless in this thing. James, is it hot in here? Do I sound like Nelly?
It's not that hot in here.
I don't know why am I doing it, because it's not like I went overboard in this opening diatribe here.
Oh.
I'm a little bit sweaty right now.
Huh.
Yeah. I don't know why. I got this V-neck. I mean, this is like AC in the front right here.
Now, there isn't a whole lot of airflow in this room, so maybe that's it.
This is what happens when you broadcast from our shoebox. How have we not got Does the broadcast studio, do we have a broadcast studio? Yeah, we do, don't we? Who's the sponsor?
It's not Drive Hubler, is it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is. Is that the studio, the entire studio, or just our shows?
I think that's the studio.
Making sure you said it. So, yes, that's what it is. I think we need a shoebox sponsor or something like that. Maybe a shoe sponsor is what I was working at. Shout out to Hubler, by the way, too. Great folks down on the south side by me. All right, we got Pat Bowen coming up, too.
Yep.
A big game for the Fever later on tonight, too. A team where they have not had much luck this season, if any luck whatsoever. The Sun of Connecticut. Well, I don't think there's a lot of sun in Connecticut, but very good basketball team. Fever and the Sun, and if you're thinking about Caitlin Clark not on the injury list, kind of wondered when she rolled that ankle back on Monday night, but everything seems to be all good in that category. We'll talk about that. We have a variety of things to talk about from what Chris Ballard had to say a little bit earlier today. Kevin Bowen's going to be here in the 4 o'clock hour. Armin Katan, you used to remember him, obviously, from CBS doing the sideline stuff. I think he's with The Athletic as well right now, but has a book. He is a writer and much, much smarter than me, which doesn't take a lot, but he is. He is a writer and talks about how you are winning in this era of college football. And if you remember a year ago, and this is something that interests me, because you go back around here, what's it been, James, 5 years, 4 years since sports betting was legalized? He had a book about that and about somebody that was really good at it a year ago. And I wonder where we are. Because I think it's about time for them to start lobbing out stats, I believe, right now, as far as, well, this is what happens, and this is the profound effect that it's had on human beings in the last 4 years, whatever.
Yeah,
yes.
It says it was legalized May 2019.
So, yes, I'm thinking probably should have had that back in May, right? The 5 years, somebody done a 5-year study.
They might be.
I would have to think that 5 years would be a benchmark for somebody to do a study. You know, I should, and I know a lot of you do. I don't begrudge you. You guys got to do with your cash whatever the hell you want to do with your cash. I mean, I talk about it all the time. Hey, here's what I would do if I were you, so it would be stupid of me to sit here and say, well, you can't do that, but go ahead and do this. But I am kind of curious on the effect that it has had of a 5-year type of study. Just out of curiosity, hell, he may not have the answer for it, but I sure as hell have the loaded up question. Armin Katayan's going to join us coming up in the 5 o'clock hour. And what else we got today? Leonard Skinner tickets along with ZZ Top right there. Who was I talking to the other day about this? I forget. I apologize. When MCA passed away with the Beastie Boys, he didn't want the Beastie Boys to move forward. Maybe it was my friend Doug. He didn't want them to move on without him, I think was the word, right? But obviously, when one of the three of ZZ Top passed away here in the past couple of years, they said, hey, you got to go out there and take advantage of the money whenever you get the money. We see that all the time. Give you a great example. Like, everybody thought that Aerosmith was this great big thing because of the decision that they made not to move forward. I think they described it as being noble, which that is great. Nobility is great. But at the same time, I would not begrudge anybody like Journey who went out and got somebody off of YouTube, or Alice in Chains that went out and got somebody that sounded in the ballpark, if anybody could, like Lane Staley, if you still wanted to move forward and, take advantage of those that love your band, even though that your lead singer is gone. The same thing with Soundgarden. We haven't heard a peep from Soundgarden since Chris Cornell died. Yeah, I guess if it's a noble gesture, then so be it. But sitting here right now, I don't mind if you move forward, because I've always said music is great. It's the soundtrack of our lives, and inevitably it will take you back to an incredibly happy moment. Now, it can be a sad moment too, but normally we utilize the power of music to take us back to moments in which we most enjoyed. That I understand. Got tickets, ZZ Top as they move forward, and Leonard Skinner is moving forward right now too. Ruoff in September, we got tickets for you by the end of the show. Tomorrow we're going to be out with the NHRA at Eagle Creek Golf Club coming up tomorrow. Should be a good time, and then obviously we'll tell you all about Friday and Saturday coming up here. 239-1070, email address jmv1075thefan.com. I think I've given you enough to go ahead and play off of right now, so have at it. Pat Boylan, bottom of the hour. Kevin Bowen, 4 o'clock hour. And Armin Katayan joins us coming up in the 5 o'clock hour. Scratching the surface on this Wednesday, thank you for joining us. The stream, the app, HD Radio, the AAA Membership Lounge, YouTube Live, 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
buddy, Swanson, full steam ahead, over there. I want to go over there. Move over, Swanson, I'm driving.
93.5 and 107.5, The Fan.
Oh, the sun always shines on TV. You got the Sun and the Fever on TV later on tonight. This is James. Did you know the band Aha had the biggest song of 1985, Take On Me? This was also a hit, but certainly a much more minor hit for the band from Norway, Aha.
Say, I don't think I've ever
The
actually heard
sun
this.
always shines on TV. It's a good song, though.
Yeah,
Actually, I think
bad.
it's better than Take On Me. Greg has a major point. When I was talking about Chris Ballard and when you have to cut 6 in the last 2 years of late-round draft selections, and this is a great point and a point that I was talking about in the open right there. Trading back to get more picks for dudes that you ultimately cut is, he says, super dumb. But it doesn't include pats on the back and accolades like oftentimes it does from those in and around the NFL that give props for your draftability. And there's nothing really super savvy about it. So you can't have it both ways. I mean, you can't be looking for it and that be your forte and not have it work in the last 2 years and go, oh, well, hell, they very seldom work. It's supposed to work because that's what you've been told. That's the forte. So that's 100% accurate. And the very reason why you can be highly critical. I mean, hell, at this point, you can be highly critical about anything. There should be nothing holding you back. But that's certainly one. Hey, listen, we'll all reverse our routes here when it's time, and that comes with results. And certainly if something is drastically different this year, we will say, see, we have no idea what we're talking about. Well, at least I will, because it's easy for me because I've already told you over and over again how dumb I am. So, but you can't have it both ways. That makes sense to you. Man, my V-neck is hanging low today. Know it? You think this is a chick shirt I got on here?
I think you're just rocking a deep V.
Do I have a blouse on today or what?
Trying to show a little cleavage right there?
Andy Moore, if I had some, I'd show it. Andy Moore, Automotive Group Hotline. Covers the Fever, Pacers Radio, friend of this show, Pat Boylan joins us now. Have you felt like, I know you've worked a little bit recently, but have you had a lot of time off compared to the lack thereof over the course of the Pacer season? Does it feel weird?
Yeah, the Olympic break is always a unique one because never in any other of the 2 seasons really, except for every 4 years in the WNBA, does something shut down, does work to shut down for a month. But we're back up and rolling here, and that changes pretty dramatically really right now because the schedule is quite compact. They're going almost the Fever every other day the rest of the way through September 19th. So it's going to be a furious finish here. 10 games remaining in about 3 weeks' time. It's
Pat Boylan with us. Now, where can we find this later on tonight? By the NBA TV, is this with you tonight?
Yes, it is with us. It is Bally Sports Indiana locally, NBA TV, Fridays Ion, I think Sundays Bally, and then the rest, I believe, are on either WTHR or their sister station.
Hey, do you get pissed when I ask you questions that clearly I know you don't have an answer for, but I ask anyway?
I don't know that I get pissed.
Okay. I'm going to ask, okay? That's a really swell setup. I know you're feeling it right now. Somebody asked me yesterday why Fever games are not somewhere on the radio, not available that way.
That's a good question, and I think it would probably be something that we would, and by we, I don't mean me, because that's certainly above my pay grade, but I think that could potentially be something in consideration for the future. I would love for it to come back. The Fever were on the radio for, 15 years or so, from 2000 to about 2015, my first year there. they were on the radio, and then that went away to kind of focus more on the TV broadcast. But the thing is, that I've learned at least, is in this Caitlin Clark era, really anything is possible. So I don't know either way, but it seems like something that potentially could return down the line. But yeah, I'll be waiting to hear any potential news like that, just like you will.
You have to look at it now as a huge missed opportunity, don't you?
You know, I think it's a situation where everything just happened really quickly, right? I mean, nobody knew that she was going to come out until she announced, and just looking at everything that was in play, I mean, we completely rehauled and renovated our TV package to be able to come out to WTHR. And, you know, it would be nice to have the ability to broadcast games over and on the radio. Obviously, you know, we've had a lot of success pairing with you guys for the Pacers for a very long time. So I'm optimistic something like that could come back one day, but we'll see.
So Pat Bowen joins us. He's on the call later on tonight with the Sun and Fever. Level of importance, because we know down the stretch here they all are on this regular season. But what about this one where the Fever have had really little to no success against the team they're playing at home tonight this season?
Yeah, that's very true. In fact, they've lost 11 straight to Connecticut. So that goes back to midway through the 2021 season. So this is an interesting one because I think it's a real test of how far you've come. Now, if tonight doesn't go well, it's not to suggest that they haven't come a long way, because they have. But the three earlier games against Connecticut were all in that early portion of the schedule where the Fever were struggling, and they had the difficulty, the much higher difficulty of schedule, and the games were coming at you constantly, and they really didn't have much time to practice. All three of those games were in the first 13 games of the year, so they haven't played over their last 27. So I'm curious to see how this looks. The Fever started out the year 0-4 at home, and that includes a loss to Connecticut in there, and they're 8-1 since. They're 8-1 at home since June. It's actually the second best home record in the WNBA since June 1st. So one thing they've done a tremendous job of, really, in that pivot from early season to everything beyond there, is protecting home court. And tonight you get one of the best teams in the league. The Sun have the second best record in the league. They traded for an all-star at the Olympic break, so they're theoretically even better. Stephanie White, who of course is a local legend and coached the Fever for a couple seasons, is the head coach now in Connecticut. So there are plenty of intriguing storylines going into this one.
So Pat Boylan, Fever, and Sun later on tonight. You mentioned that run since June. How much of it, and I know this is more recent history, I also understand she only had 2 the other night in the win over Atlanta, but how much of a factor has Lexi Hall been over this successful run that you just referenced?
Yeah, massive, and I think especially lately. Coming out of the Olympic break, she's 10 of 14 from the three-point line. And when her shot's falling, she's really valuable because she's maybe the best on-ball wing-type defender that the Fever have. I would say Aaliyah Boston is probably Indiana's best defensive player. But in terms of wing defenders, I mean, late in the game against Atlanta, they put her on Ryan Howard, a 2-time All-Star that would have been a 3-time All-Star if she didn't get hurt, and she's only been in the pros for 3 seasons. They put her on her, and she did a great job. She came up with a key steal late. She also came up with a massive moment where she had an and one and then missed her free throw but got her own rebound, set up Kelsey Mitchell for an and one. The Fever had a 5-point possession when their lead was decreasing dramatically, and things were starting to get a little bit hairy out in Atlanta on Monday, and that might have been the possession of the game, and Lexi Hull was really big in it. So she's kind of become the quote-unquote X factor here lately, I think especially out of the Olympic break. And as the Fever look for more players to step up out of their big 3 or their big 4 or wherever you want to draw that line, they've been looking a few different directions, but lately it's been Lexi Hull with her shooting. And her defense has always been there, but when the shot's falling and then you add the defense to that mix, she's become a pretty potent player, and she's made a ton of big plays and a ton of big shots down the stretch. I mean, she was just fantastic against Seattle on ABC. The 6 of 7 from the three-point line was her best game, I think, unquestionably as a pro. But it's been really good for her to string those together. You're not going to go 6 of 7, maybe again the rest of the season, but can you consistently make big plays, especially in key moments down the stretch? And she was big again in Atlanta. And I would make a case that Atlanta game on Monday was the biggest game the Fever have played in. Now, that could be topped and will hopefully be topped here within the next few weeks, but I would argue it's the biggest game the Fever have played in since they were last in the playoffs, which has been a while now, 2016, because you had a tiebreaker on the line, and it was the team that you need to stay in front of to make the playoffs in the first place, and you're on the road. And so to get a win in a sold-out arena down the stretch in an important game like that, Lexi Hull was big in it, but it was a really significant stepping stone, I think, for this franchise.
He is Pat Bowen, downtown Gamers Fieldhouse tonight. You got the Sun and the Fever. He's got the broadcast for you later on this evening. And maybe this is similar to that of the NBA, and we know this. In the NBA, team always going to make a run. The team's going to get out, and the team usually 95% of the time makes a run. Is that what we have seen so frequently against the Fever? Or is there a significant thing that needs to be fixed as to why, for example, like in Atlanta, they seemingly always leave the door wide open?
It's an interesting question that I've actually spent a lot of time thinking about the last couple of days.
This is my first interesting question of all time, by the way, too. So we're going to put this one up on the wall.
Well, one of one. You can hang
Thank you.
Hang it there on that window behind you. No, it is because I think it's probably a little bit of all of those things. Like in the NBA and in the WNBA, and I think in a lot of professional sports just in general, you see this, and it seems like it's happening a lot more. It absolutely is in the NBA. Just leads more often than not are not safe. That said, the Fever have had their fair share of games where they've gone up by a significant number, had to hold on in the end. In almost all of those cases, they have ultimately gotten the job done, save one instance that I can think of off the top of my head. I think it's also just, you've got a young team that has a lot of talent, and at the same time, not an abundance of experience. So you're playing against some of these teams. I mean, it happened twice against Phoenix, where the Fever were able to hold on both times, but they lost big leads both times. So you're going up against a team with 3 Olympians and a ton of veteran experience who has also a lot of talent and is going to figure it out. I also just think back, John, I mean, over the last 6 or 7 years, times have been fairly tough around here from a Fever perspective. And just to be able to entertain this question, I think, is such a good sign, because now that we're talking about can they hold on to big leads more often than they have, I mean, that's a sign of where the franchise has gone lately, because they weren't getting those big leads previously. I mean, they went from 5 to 13 wins last year, but even those 13 wins, rarely were they winning convincingly. Rarely were they getting up 15 to 20 points and putting other teams away. So I think in a weird way, it is a sign of growth too. They're putting themselves in a ton of positions now where they're up by 15 to 20 points. And I think some of that probably comes with repetitions and experience and getting in these situations more often in terms of holding on to them. But I do think there's something to you watch professional basketball these days, and what used to feel like a big lead, maybe you reframe what you think is a big lead now, because 10 seems like it's almost nothing, 15 seems manageable, and 20, while that's a big lead, doesn't feel like you're totally out of the game. And I don't know that you would have said that 7 or 8 years ago.
All right, Pat Boylan with us. Final thing. I will put you on the hook. Actually, I'm going to blame this on a listener. BT Do just sent me this, but it's something I also wonder about, because I as well see this after every game. BT asked, can you mention to Pat if Grace Berger should be playing? I'm tired of seeing after every game people complaining that the former IU product doesn't get clocked. I feel like she should help or could help. She'd be out there and inserted in the game by Christy Sides. I would tend to agree with that as well. I just don't think she can get her own shot, and I think she struggles defensively as well. Two things that I think keep her from any playing time basically whatsoever. Is that close?
Yeah, and I think, right now she's a second-year player, and I think what's happening now is not necessarily going to be what happens the rest of her career, hopefully here in Indiana. I think the first and most obvious reason at play here is that Caitlin Clark's playing 35 minutes a game, and she's second in the WNBA in minutes. So whereas last year Grace was playing more regularly, there wasn't a star point guard out there that was taking up 35 of the 40 minutes like Caitlin Clark has. And then, I think where this team is right now, defensively, there have been signs of progress, but it's still the area that they're working on improving the most. And right now, while it's been a little bit of an up and down year for Erica Wheeler, in those minutes where Caitlin Clark is not on the floor, right now I do think Erica Wheeler is a better defender. And so that's, I believe, why that they have gone in that direction. But I don't necessarily know that this is something where we should slam the book shut on her career at all. She's a young player. She's a first-round draft pick, a lot of upside. She's had, some nice moments even in her brief WNBA career so far. This is certainly a more challenging stretch for her, but it's also, a sign that the talent level has risen around the Fever even last year to this year. But Grace is somebody that I know is highly thought of around the Fever organization, and I'll be interested to see how her career unfolds. I think it could just be a situation where the Fever have not going to knock on wood here literally, but knock on wood, been fairly healthy in their backcourt.
Yeah.
Clark's playing a bunch of minutes, and right now the situation is not perfect for her. But I don't necessarily think that means that that's going to be the case long term.
I like her a great deal too, but I understand why she doesn't get that clock at this point as well. And Caitlin Clark with the rolled ankle the other day against Atlanta, everything all good?
I think so. She did come back. She did play the rest of the way. I thought was pretty effective. So I think she fortunately, maybe dodged a little bit of a bullet there. We're getting to the point where, and I noted this on the broadcast, I mean, she's putting up such consistently impressive numbers that you're getting to the point where she goes for 19, 7, and 7, and it doesn't necessarily jump off the page anymore. And that's just indicative of how well she's playing, because she's had some of these just eye-popping games and massive numbers, and we should not forget how impressive even a 19, 7, and 7 game is. So, yeah, I mean, when she originally went down, the hush in that building was crazy, especially when you consider it was a road game. Most people are there to watch her play, or at least in part to watch her play, and kind of experiencing all of a sudden what was a really raucous environment just kind of go numb immediately, and you just kind of cross your fingers and hope. But she even made a little bit of a joke about it afterwards, saying, after watching the ankle turn, it really didn't look that bad. And I think she joked and made her look a little bit soft. So if she's joking about it, I would sense that's a good sign. She's not on the injury report, so I would guess that she's totally good to go.
And on Monday night during Pearl Jam show, Eddie Vedder referenced her and gave her props, which I think everybody does today, right? So
I heard that. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
It is. Hey, Pat, where can we find you again tonight and at what time?
Bally tonight, 7 o'clock, Fever and Connecticut Sun.
You got it, buddy. It's always a pleasure, man, to talk with you. Go get it.
Likewise, John. Thank you.
It's Pat Boylan right there. Later on tonight, you can watch him. Bally Sports Indiana. Love Pat Boylan. Bowen, top of the hour. Armin Katayan, 5 o'clock hour. Skinner, play some Skinner, man. Skinner and ZZ Top tickets before the end of the show. Hey, you stay right there. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
The cream, yeah. The cream of the crop. And there is no one that does it better.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Now you go with Lionel Richie, huh? What made you do that?
It was the first song that I saw on Spotify.
Whose Spotify is that? This guy, Lionel Richie's Dancing on the Ceiling is the first song.
Mine.
Is it?
I mean, from doing the show, I have a lot of stuff on here.
Right here, buddy. That's a big surprise. I dig Lionel Richie, but I'm surprised. Not Lamb of God or Slipknot or anything like that?
I've got Lamb of God and Slipknot and all that other stuff on here, too.
Huh. Something new about James, who's running things over there. I'm John. Thank you for joining us. Jalen Simpson, Laquan Treadwell, Chris Lawns, and Marcel Dabo added, according to Joel A. Erickson, in the last 30 minutes to the Colts practice squad, in case you are keeping track at home, and I'm assuming a number of you are. If you're asking me, and I brought this up at the outset of the show, Chris Ballard talking about the belief of the young secondary. What he said today was a mirror image of what he said to me 2 weeks ago. Just understand that. Quote, about the secondary, they don't become players without playing. And understand that. But it's not automatic that they're going to play well now, and it's not automatic that they're going to play well in the future. Just maybe mixing a little something more in. We'll see. Samuel Womack was the guy that ended up getting from San Francisco off the waiver wire. The request was granted earlier today. Darrell Baker Jr. was waived with that move. If you're asking regarding Matt Gay, Chris Ballard, good kicker, really good kicker, so he wasn't worried about what everybody else is worried about going into last Thursday night's preseason game 3. Jason Bean, the quarterback, I answered this yesterday, and it probably wasn't the best way to answer it, but was really the only way that I thought about doing it. Our good friend Brett, who's a listener to the show, Brett Wampler, presented a question to me, and one was, why Ellinger, why not Bean? Bean clearly outplayed him. And I went for the old standby of, good Lord, who cares? Yes. And that's not me being old fartedy or curmudgeony or crusty or any of those old descriptions, those cantankerously old descriptions. I just thought, Brett, and I love Brett, but you should not give a crap. Now, the other part of it was, Spencer Strader goes and you keep Matt Gay. Matt Gay makes a lot of money, and they trust in Matt Gay and him being able to knock down the field goals. So those are the two questions. And I answered one with what I felt was fact, and the whole backup to the backup quarterback, to me was just opinion. But, man, it just, if you've ever seen the film Meatballs, it just doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. I don't care if it's Ellinger or Bean. I don't care if it's Ellinger Bean or Bean Ellinger or salmon beans. I don't care. And you shouldn't either. Because it just doesn't matter. Bowen was at that presser, or at least, I think, had a couple of questions lobbed at Chris a little bit earlier today. Kev from the Morning Wake Up Call with KB and Andy is going to join us next, and Armin Katayan, formerly of CBS and of The Athletic right now. A little college football conversation coming up after 5 with Armin. 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Sit tight.
much of Dr. Pepper. Make it fast. I'm in a damn hurry.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Oh, Stevie Wonder, very superstitious. Did you know that our very own DJ Skids from the JMV Takeover, Chris Skidmore, has an outstanding mini mix? That's the remix of two songs. Between this song, Stevie Wonder's Superstitious, and the Ghetto Boys classic, My Mind's Playing Tricks on Me.
Really?
Oh, it's just glorious. You ever heard the Ghetto Boys song, My Mind's Playing Tricks on Me? Just one
off the top of my head, I can't remember
if there is a group, and this is a hip-hop group, or rap group, if you will, but a hip-hop group will say, if there is one that is massively underrated for the impact that they had on listenership globally, especially here, Ghetto Boys. What a great song. Just great lyrics. Just great. But that is a Skids mini mix, which, by the way, you can hear because DJ Skids will join me live. JMV Takeover is live from Mystic Waters Campground. That is on Saturday night, and I cannot wait to see everybody out there. Saturday night, all the cabins are sold out. You can do your live requests there, or you can call them in. Again, that's on B105.7. But DJ Skids will be doing his thing and his mini mixing live with us out at Mystic Waters off of I-69 in Pendleton. I will say this, even though Saturday night the cabins are all sold out, as long as I've got floor space, you can just pass out there. That's okay. It'll be just fine. But there's also tent space, so you can grab your pup tent. I don't know about the RV space or the camper space. I know that it was limited last check, but it is going to be a blast this weekend. The Labor Day weekend bender with Heaven Hill Distillery, Mystic Waters Campground, Ford's Garage, and a shout-out to Richard and anybody else who's going to be involved in that. Is going to be a blast coming up on Saturday. But no, Stevie Wonder to Ghetto Boys, classic stuff right there. Meantime, on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline, fresh off meeting collectively with Colts General Manager Chris Ballard, the morning wake-up call with KB and Andy, and I think Andy Swebo is out for the remainder of the week, and James Boyd is in. Kevin Bowen joins us. What is the reason for the Swebo absence? What's happening?
I think it's a little R&R.
R&R?
I think he's heading up to your great state of Michigan, if I'm not mistaken.
Who the hell gets R&R in Michigan?
Well, I think Chris Denary is a big fan of the state of Michigan, if I'm not mistaken, as well. And so, yes, I believe he is taking a few days before it really, really picks up. So, yeah, James Boyd the rest of the week with myself.
Nothing stood out to me today at all. And that's kind of normal protocol. We get close to the season, they end up getting their 53-man, at least at this moment, set. And you guys talked to Ballard. And I think we kind of got what we got. But I did want to ask you this, because I'd mentioned this to you going back to a couple of weeks when I talked to him up in Westfield. It appears like he's going into year number 8 like he does not have pressure, the weights, or a care in the world compared to the way people would frame it up because of the lack of the past 7 years worth of results. Would you agree with that, just with the opportunity of talking with him today?
Certainly. Yeah, I think that's spot on. He's a relaxed dude with the resume that he's got, and he fielded questions today about his resume and hot seat and all those things, and certainly is a double downing on the either you believe in something or you don't, and I believe in this, and either I get fired or I don't. Is basically I'm paraphrasing a bit there, but one of his answers during the press conference. So. Yeah, that's pretty much how he handled any kind of future-related questions. And, there are a couple of things that, maybe stood out more than others. But, yeah, for the most part, I don't think you're going to have some juicy, NFL Live is leading off with some juicy headline per se, from the Ballard presser.
I think there's a reason why that it's justified he feels that way, at least in terms of Jim Irsay decision-making, because while a lot of people say you either got to make the postseason or you're going to be gone, listen, I thought that should have been the case, like feels maybe a half a dozen times over the past 8 years. I just don't think, Kev, that is the case this season.
Yeah, I mean, if I had a resume that you could compare to a lot of fellow GMs around the league or just teams around the league, and to me that would be in the bottom half of the league. But when your boss calls you a blue chip GM or compares you to Michael Jordan, you're probably going to feel pretty darn comfortable. So I think that's where he's at. I mentioned it to you last week. I want to say there's 25 teams around the league that have won a division title since the Colts last have. I think 21 teams have won a playoff game since the Colts last have. So, there's plenty of reasons to question Chris Ballard, but I don't think the owner clearly has not done that publicly, and I don't think behind the scenes there's been maybe as much of that as, even for his predecessor in Ryan Grigson. That's why I think Ballard feels as comfortable as he does. I also think he feels genuinely pretty good about his football team. I don't think there is smoke in that. He said today he feels like this is the best, combo of the offense and defensive lines he feels like he's had in his, 8 years. And, the skill group feels like it's in the best position it's been in as well. So, while the owner's words would be comforting, and hell, it'd be comforting for anyone to have a boss speak that way about an individual, I also think there is just some genuine belief in what he has here in 2024.
Yeah. Is there truth, in your opinion, to his belief in how good this team can be this year? Is there firm truth in that? And is the negativity that we bring up just because there has been so much of it and just because we have seen so few results over the past 7 years, should there be more reason for us to believe much in the fashion in which the general manager does in this team?
It's funny. I've obviously thought a lot about that, John, and I really think you could, pack a pretty nice bag of evidence to either side of the argument. I think Vegas has set the over-under at 8.5. If you wanted to go under that, you could play an Anthony Richardson injury card. You could play look at the quarterbacks you played last year. 10 rookie backup quarterbacks you faced. That schedule's not there. The AFC, I think, is as deep as it's been in years. As great as Latu has looked at times, the rookie pass rushers, more often than not, don't reach that sort of peak. So you could play that, or you could say, here is Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor together. That is such a dynamic element. Shane Steichen is a, really, really innovative and strong offensive mind. You put that combo with the best trench play, in Ballard's words, and 8 years, that, okay, the division, streak is going to end, and you do feel like you can be a double-digit win team. So, I could probably listen to both sides of it. There are just some big factors that are difficult to gauge. Probably being atop that list, that's probably the hardest one. And then do you think, well, Joe Flacco's every bit of Gardner Minshew. He's in there. You can still be super competitive. Or do you get the Joe Flacco that, the Jets and the Ravens saw there, late in his career, and maybe it's not the 6-game great run that he had with Cleveland last season. So I feel like I've heard from people, really pretty split down the middle in terms of how they view the Colts coming into the season. Some are uber optimistic, and others are, a little bit more of, I'll believe it when I see it. And, I just feel like the schedule in the AFC as a whole is better than what people give it credit for.
By the way, it is completely reasonable to have to see it first before you believe it. If you're a fan, if you're us, and you have to talk about it every day, that has to be universally understood throughout that organization, because even with the surprise of a year ago, there's not a lot to go on. There's not a lot of confidence to go on. So that's confidence that this team, this organization, this coaching staff has to create for itself. So, again, I think it's totally fine for everybody to believe and to be apprehensive to buy in before you actually see it.
Sure. Yeah, I think that makes total sense. I mean, again, the organization right now is in a division title, lack thereof, division title, playoff win drought that we haven't seen in 30 years. So, in a similar way to how probably people felt about the Pacers entering last season with, at the time, I think it was 9 years without a playoff series win, 6 years without any playoff win. You got to believe it. I mean, the Indiana Fever was.
No, you sold me on entertaining losses during that stretch, remember?
Hey, all about the rebuild of getting Benedict Mathurin and fellow first-round picks. And the Fever. I mean, right now, 7 years without a playoff berth, and obviously trending in a very positive direction to end that. So, the Fever and the Pacers were able. Well, I'm assuming the Fever will continue down this path. They're able to, quiet any of that, and now it's time for the Colts to try and do that because it has been sitting there for certainly the majority of the Chris Ballard era.
Is it okay for me to bring this up? I did a couple of days ago, actually going back to last week, and I didn't really take it much further, but have you guys brought up an over-under for Flacco usage this season that's reasonable?
I think we pondered 2.5 or 3.5 games and set in over-under.
Oh, you pondered, so that was much more than me just bringing it up. Oh, by the way, you pondered.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, let's start here. Do you think that's like a fair over-under? Like if Vegas called you and said, John, we need you to set the over-under on Joe Flacco starts this season. We need betting on both sides of the line. Where would you set that?
Do you really want to know?
Oh, no. Are you going 5.5?
I would, regrettably right now. And again, this is just what our eyes have been conditioned to in the past year and just waiting to see, hopefully, a drastic difference. Yeah, I would probably put that, a handful. Is that fair? Does that sound bad? Do I not ponder that enough? Maybe I need to ponder a little more, like you.
Well, honestly, I should probably think with my head more than my heart because,
I don't want to think that way, but I'm conditioned to think that way. Yeah,
I know. When I hear it, I'm like, gosh, that sounds just horrific from a Richardson. I mean, obviously from a Richardson standpoint, from a Colts franchise standpoint, that sounds absolutely awful. I don't know if I can go that high, but I mean, he played in 4 games, 173 snaps last season. We've gone over the numbers a million times here this offseason. So, yeah, I understand why there are people out there that would think that way. I don't know. I probably think if Vegas set a real over-under, it would be a little bit more like in the 3.5, 4.5 range. But, I mean, hell, all it takes is, 1-month injury, and, you get no indication. Ballard said it again today. You get no indication from the important people in the Colts organization that they are going to scale back in the run game usage of Anthony Richardson.
Right.
Now, Ballard again today. He's got to protect himself better. I watched those 4 plays. Does he need to run through the finish line against Houston in the end zone? Sure. All 4 of them were design runs. I mean, that's Shane Steichen dialing them up. I didn't view Anthony Richardson trying to get extra yards or, he should have thrown it out of bounds or he should have slid there. He was trying to be Houdini. I didn't get any of that. The 3 of the 4 dudes that injured him weighed 30 pounds less than him. It's not like some 300-pounder fell on him in the pocket. So, when you look at all of that, that probably adds to why, when you say 5.5, I immediately think, oh, my gosh, that sounds horrific. But then, when I'm doing it with my head, I'm like, well, John might look really, really smart if he takes the over. And
well, that's
October.
That's never the case. Don't go that far, okay?
Come on now. Eastern Green Valedictorian, if I remember.
Come on, yeah. Oh, yeah. Valedictorian. I can't even spell it, much less be it. So, hell. Kevin Bowen.
One thing
yeah, go ahead.
I'll say just one thing to add on Richardson, and I was struck by this today. I was reading a story on Bo Nix, and the Colts played the Broncos a few weeks ago. I think a lot of people made a lot about Bo Nix and 60-some college football games he played in. Drew Brees was interviewed for the story, and he threw out a number of – he believes that you have to play in 50 college and or NFL games before you're truly ready to thrive. And when you think about that, I mean, Richardson's played in 17. So, thrive is obviously having great success. You could have middling success and maybe not be at that number. But if you want to believe Drew Brees there of that 50, game mark, I mean, right now Richardson's played 12 games at Florida and however many starts he got last year. 4. I mean, it's 16, 17 starts since high school. So, if you do that math, I mean, you need 2 full seasons of them playing football, before you feel like he can be in an upper echelon of an AFC right now, that if you're going to make any top 5, top 10 quarterback list in the entire league, the vast majority of those QBs are coming from this conference or would be in this conference. So it's just another reminder of, yes, the playoff drought is the playoff drought, and ultimately wins and losses define the league. But Richardson's individual health is as close as you could get to being right there with the importance of getting into the postseason as well.
Kevin Bowen's on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline, and this is well past time. It was last Thursday. But other than it just being a half-assed, lazy look at the Colts, talking about Flacco coming in regarding ineffectiveness, and you could tell that both Al Michaels and Kirk Herbstreit, they were so checked out of that game, and maybe if we were them, we would be checked out too of a preseason Game 3 in Cincinnati where one team wasn't playing its starters. Maybe we'd feel the same way. But when Herbstreit brought up Joe Flacco and, how many games do you go if it's ineffective and when do you go to Flacco, do you think anybody had brought up to him, organizationally speaking, about Flacco as an insurance policy? Maybe not so much for that, because that's a stupid argument, because then everybody gets fired. If he's ineffective and you bring in Flacco, everybody needs to be fired. But it's logical to understand that he may end up being injured and Flacco comes in. Do you think that was a conversation that Herbstreit had with somebody, or is that just kind of something half-assed he made up in a very half-assed broadcast?
Yeah, that's a great point to bring up, because, even when I'm at Colts home games, I always go back and watch the TV copy because they get tremendous access throughout the week to their respective teams. So, many times you will hear conversations or tidbits, whatever, that, again, they've had in one-on-one settings with, and we're talking about Richardson, Steichen, Ballard, the important people, ownership even, with the organization. And, again, the Colts were in Cincinnati on that Tuesday joint practice, and Kirk Herbstreit was there. So, there are multiple days with the Colts in Cincy. So I think it's a really fair point to bring up. I guess to answer it, I no, and I would think not. But, again, Herbstreit, and watching him for years of college football, I don't think he brings up just kind of random.
Oh, that's like something I would bring up here. I mean, that's how stupid that was. It was like, hey, did that guy in the afternoon just bring that up? That's what it felt like when I heard it.
It sounds like June 23rd, you're in a backyard patio party, and it's 5 o'clock on a Friday, and here you are just throwing something against the wall. Oh, yeah. It's peak summer radio fodder. And so, yeah, again, I think it's a totally fair point you bring up. But, again, Herbstreit doesn't strike me as that individual. And, Flacco had a nice camp, and he's got the big arm, and you still see it. But, yeah, disaster level on multiple different levels.
There's zero way it's because of ineffectiveness. Because am I wrong about that? Am I over the top that if that were ever the case, as Herbstreit described it last Thursday, if that's ever the case, doesn't everybody get canned? Anybody around that, isn't that kind of okay? That's just something you can't go back from. Now, injury-wise, all right, I understand that. That's why he's here in the first place. But the way that Herbstreit described it, yeah, it's just like me half-assing something in the afternoon, some kind of topic in June like that. So I just had kind of wondered if he had heard maybe bits and pieces from somebody regarding that and felt compelled to utilize it in a broadcast in which you knew you were going to go deep in a lot of your content because of the lack of game excitement that was going on?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think you even thinking about that's such an idea makes sense, but I just can't see people in the Colts organization saying that with enough conviction to where, whatever Herb Street's going to say, hey, Al, let's run with it. And yeah, I mean, it is second half of a preseason game, so you are getting pretty deep into the, here's the, White Sox radio play-by-play person trying to keep the audience entertained after 101 losses. So
that guy, everybody hates that guy's guts. What's his name? They hate him.
Aren't they running it back with him too? I saw, which I was like, oh boy, that might be worse than setting the record for losses. You don't draft Anthony Richardson 4th overall if you're pulling the plug, 12 games into his career. It's or at whatever point they would be doing it. Yeah, I just, and theoretically, if Richardson is struggling as a thrower, he still offers this quote-unquote higher floor as a runner. And, theoretically that weapon would be there. And Joe Flacco next to Jonathan Taylor, probably wouldn't provide that. And, I was half right and half paying attention to Herb Street and Michaels when they went on this, 3 or 4 minute debate. Part of me thought, have we forgotten about Flacco for a second? I recommend to people yes, it was an unbelievable 6-game run he had in Cleveland to go from the couch to, into the playoffs. But, I mean, there were still plenty of turnovers, and just look at what he had done before that. I mean, we saw with Matt Ryan, I mean, it can go in a hurry with some of these guys. And by all accounts, again, I thought Flacco had a really nice camp preseason. You still see the big arm, et cetera, et cetera. But benching your franchise quarterback, sending whatever message that would send to him when he needs reps more than you could argue any person in the NFL, none of it adds up to me.
Kevin Bowen's on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. What's hilarious about all of this is me bringing this up and us talking about this would have made perfectly good sense in 2022. That's something that would have happened in 2022. That's a decision that, that's the type of decision because it was such a stinking circus.
Gosh, I'm trying to follow it all. Jeff Saturday went back to Matt Ryan, didn't he? Isn't that what he did?
Yeah.
I was like,
it was great.
Trying to think for a second, where are we at? Was it, Ursay thought Ellinger,
I love Jeff Saturday too. I don't pile on him for that. And I also know this: if he'd have won, if they'd have beat Minnesota when they had that lead, or Washington when they had the opportunity, dude would still be here right now. I think people don't recognize that enough. But he would still be here.
Yeah, I just go back to 2022, and the Colts were bad, boring, and old at quarterback.
Yeah,
that is the triple whammy. That's the last thing you want to be in the NFL. You don't want to be bad, you don't want to be boring, and you sure as hell don't want to be those first two things and be old at quarterback. Because if you are the New England Patriots this year and you're bad, at least be bad with Drake May getting valuable reps. If you're going to try, again, look at the Colts in '98. Were they bad? Yes. Did Peyton Manning play, and was there an entertainment factor to a level with watching Peyton, have a moment or two despite you going 3-13? Certainly. And then lo and behold, you obviously reap benefits like no other in that very next season. So, yeah, again, Joe Flacco taking meaningful reps this season is not a good thing.
Hey, Kev, as an IU guy, were you a cafe pizzeria dude?
Certainly.
You believe that place is gone after 70 years?
I could not. So I live, where like Buskirk Chumley Theater is?
Oh, yeah. I peed over there all the time. Right there in that little alley. Yeah.
I was going to say, that is.
I think fictitiously that's where the Moocher lived, and Breaking Away was in that alley right there. I think so. Yes.
I think it was a Goldschlager shot that sent me puking over that balcony that I lived for my 21st birthday. Because I lived just down from that, and there were many a times Cafe Pizzeria was on the agenda for me. So absolutely hated seeing that this morning.
It has been a tough year because you lose the iconic Cafe Pizzeria, and then months ago it was the Irish Lion. That just can't be. That's to me among the things that always helped Bloomington stand alone. Places like that, and that sucks.
I'm gonna sound a little, probably get off my lawn. I'm fortunate to go down there, and this will be my 6th year teaching down there, and obviously, there are a lot of great spots on Kirkwood, but it is just unbelievable how, and I graduated there in 2012, just how commercialized it has become in the, what now, gosh, I can't believe it's been 12 years since I was in college, in that, 12 years. And I mean, you look at places that you consider icons, really, it's just, I mean, I guess if you get further down Kirkwood, closer to college and Walnut, you have a few more of that, but it's really just that north side of Kirkwood that only has a couple of that. I mean, everything on the, really on the Kilroy side of it, just looks so much different than what it did. So, yeah, I'm hoping, some of those places that have certainly held the test of time and are true Bloomington icons can hang in there a little bit longer, but we'll see.
Kev, it's hard for me to fathom how many movies, like The Lost Boys and Pet Sematary, where I use the back exits of the Von Lee next to People's Park to get in absolutely free, to now where you go in there and pay $12 for macaroni and cheese. That is drastically different.
I'm trying to think. They had a huge...
Did you ever play hacky sack in People's Park?
Well, I'm trying to think of a guy that... Occupy Bloomington was going on. What was that guy's name? People's Park was kind of overtaken when I think it was my senior year. I mean, again, this is 12 years ago, and it was some national craze. Occupy this, occupy that. What was that guy? He was like a big lawyer down in the Bloomington area. If you said his name, for some reason the only name that's popping in my head is seeing the hammer on all the billboards around our highways here in Indiana, but. That was probably my distinct memory of People's Park.
Well, and then I had friends 4 years older than I. They were going to IU that lived. There used to be apartments above Kilroy's right there, and lived in the apartments. I think above Kilroy's, apartments above Noble Romans, where that used to be right there. Those were always crap holes, but everybody wanted those crap holes because they were. I'm using this word too much probably, but they were iconic for the time as a party place and a great place to live. And, this is drastically – I know everything changes. There's no doubt about that. But, that's always, for me, what helped set Bloomington apart were places like that and Cafe Pizzeria and the Irish Lion. We can go even further back to – I was a big fan of McCree's Deli. They tried to reboot that. That didn't work. There are a number of places that haven't been there for a while that we certainly miss. But I'm going to tell you, if they ever try to mess with the video saloon, if they ever try to mess with the vid, then I'm assuming the vid's still there, right?
Well, that and the bouncer. The bouncer's been at the vid for years. I would hope. I'm trying to think. My wife.
My high school point guard came bouncing down the stairs from the vid, drunk, fell down, and cut his index finger off on the guardrail right there on the street.
I think I'd rather fall off Mount Everest than fall down the steps of the vid.
Hey, my point guard. There's my high school point guard just took his index finger off because he fell down the stairs, wobbled out into the street right there on Walnut or off of Walnut, whatever that is right there. So
you go down those steps, it's got to be one of the highest points in Monroe County right there. So
the vid. Oh, shout out. I'm assuming it's still there, the vid, but I know it's a lot changed since then even I've been there too. So I
thought this, IU, the opponent Saturday's Florida International, and all these naming rights. Florida International is pretty much Pitbull's university now.
Yeah, it is.
He's got the naming rights of the state. I thought, can we get Pitbull inside of the Bluebird?
Well, I was thinking maybe what's the group that sings all the time during Christmas? Not Push Down and Turn. What are they?
Chaser.
Yeah, Straight. Can we name it after Straight No Chaser Stadium?
All right. Well, there were times last year when Tom Allen was snapping his fingers, and I thought he might be an opening act for straight-nosed faces. So.
Oh, man, I could do this all day. Alas, I better go here because James is losing his mind across from me. So, James, we got to get to a break, and it'll probably be like 2 minutes long, and I'll be back in 5 seconds. Thanks a lot, James. So, all right, you and James Boyd tomorrow morning at 7, correct?
Correct. Yes, we'll break it down for you from Chris Ballard today.
Woo! All right, then. Appreciate you, buddy.
See you, John.
Kevin Bowen on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Rob Albright says McCree's awesome. And remember, The Godfather, simply the best. McCree's, when I talk about up here all the time, and I use the District Tap, whom I'm with right now, as a great pregame spot. And people normally say, you mean you're going to the game? Yeah. No, pregaming to me meant you go out before you actually then further go out. Does that make sense? That was pre-gaming. McCree's was always in Bloomington a pre-game destination location. Not going to a game, but then further going out, if that makes sense. Thank you, Rob, for that. All right, James, I'm going to take a break. Get off me. I'll take a break. 239-1070 on the other side. Armin Katayan, top of the hour. 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.
The Ride with JMV.
1, is this or is this not the XFL? Yes, it is. 2, do I or do I not currently have a pulse? Yes, I do. Let's play football.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Oh, yeah. Did you get the edited version, I hope, for this?
It's the instrumental version.
Oh, the instrumental.
Yeah.
Maroon. Ghetto boys trick-or-treating, robbing little kids for bags. I love those lyrics. Here's what I also love, too. You go back to the Atlanta game. If you guys defensively, this is one of my favorite defensive moves of all time. And we have become, by the way, if the Fever happened to beat the Sun tonight, Lexi Hall's who we want on the show. We haven't reached out for anybody. Haven't tried for Caitlin Clark. We're just kind of waiting for them to come to us. So Lexi Hall tomorrow if they win, because I'm assuming they will not want to come on if they lose. But it was Pat Bowen and I at the top of the hour talking about the Fever and the Sun later on tonight. And over the past 10, the success this team has had, and especially when Lexi Hall's knocking down the perimeter jump shot. Did you see her playing defense the other night near the sideline where the offensive player with the ball lost her balance, and she just kind of gave a little bit of a shove right there. I thought, that is so savvy. I love it. Just a little bit of a shove out of bounds. Sun and Fever later on tonight. That is one that the Fever need to get. JMV, I see a trip to the Dollar General store for you soon. Your shirt is about ready to fall off. I'm afraid we're going to see a nip slip. We are close because I don't know whether or not I have just a true deep V-neck on today. This is from Dollar General, or if this is like a blouse. But it is deep here. So I could probably go shirtless if you guys want inside the AAA membership lounge via YouTube Live. If I went shirtless, I would hope that Matt and Matt would continue the AAA membership sponsorship inside the lounge if I did go shirtless. But yeah, I think you're close here. This is a deep V I got working here. It's almost like somebody has had a gigantic head that is stretched out in the collar area. Remember like George Costanza and James Spader in that episode of Seinfeld? Gritty, good to hear from you right there. JMV, when I was in school at Bloomington, we lived on South Washington. Half a house, paid a total of $158 a month between the three of us. That's $52.66 each, plus utilities. Not the prettiest house, but couldn't beat the rent. A few blocks south of the square. And see, therein lies the difference now. Because you go down to Bloomington, and these kids, freshmen, sophomore, a lot of them are living in places that are better than a lot of places that you and I are living in right now, like in brownstones. I always thought when I went to Indiana State that it was a rite of passage to live in a crap hole. So I decided accordingly, and I lived in crap holes. That's the only way to put it. It was okay. Yeah, this is kind of the way that it is in college. 606 South 5th in Terre Haute. Had a chimney in the living room when it snowed because the flue was broken, and I think taken out, the snow would land in the living room. It was special. And there were bugs and everything else. It was a crap hole. 6th and Deming was probably the better of the three, but still very crap hole-ish. And 8th and Crawford was the incredible party house, and nobody ever walked around outside. Obviously when we weren't having parties, nobody ever walked around not wearing shoes. Crap hole. So it is much different, certainly down there today. And they just continue to add. And it makes you wonder on Kirkwood there what Cafe Pizzeria is going to end up as. I don't know, something that serves chicken fingers or, more apartments, upscale. I don't know about that, but I still love it, though. I do. But me, always in a crap hole. It's from Jared. So, JMV, if Richardson is benched for ineffectiveness, everyone is canned. Chris Polian is our interim general manager, and Jeff Saturday is the coach. That's why I brought that up to Kevin. And this goes back to the Thursday night game that was on Amazon. And I just described it as a half-ass effort by the play-by-play man and the color analyst. And as good as both have been, Hall of Fame worthy, and certainly Al Michaels arguably is the greatest of all time, but that doesn't mean your moment was the greatest on that Thursday night because they really didn't act like they cared. And honestly, who could blame them? It was a boring as hell game. Cincinnati didn't play the starters. But if you're watching it, then you notice Herbstreit going to the whole, so what happens if you have Joe Flacco, if Richardson is ineffective? And while it was a half-assed effort for sure, and this is what I asked Kevin, it felt as if he got that information from somebody. I mean, you don't just bring that up unless you're me and you, I guess, sparking a stupid conversation. That's like something I would do. That's not something he would do unless the spark happened with somebody that he trusted that brought it up. And again, the argument is with Flacco, as I brought up the over-under possibilities of games played by Flacco this year if Richardson gets injured, because we all know this. You can say you're going to be more careful and more cautious. We've been down this path before. When you get out there, you just kind of act like you normally would. You go at it. And it's going to take you a minute to get used to that, even if you can't ever get used to it. Think about how long it took Andrew Luck, and really it took him, getting bent over like a folding stinking chair by a linebacker and a ruptured spleen or kidney or whatever the hell that was at the time. But I guess what I'm saying is I wouldn't count on those type of results, and I also wouldn't count on the Colts holding back from something that they deem with the possibility of being highly productive. But getting back to the broadcast and the reason why I asked Kevin that, it did sound like that Herbstreit got something from somebody right there. And maybe he mixed it up with injuries compared to ineffectiveness, but yeah, if it's because of ineffectiveness, injury, you understand. That's why Flacco was here. But if it is just an ineffective quarterback and you think you should be getting more and you can win with him over Richardson, then yeah, everybody's fired. Honestly, you don't want that. That would revert back to 2022 and what was an absolute clown show. You don't want that. So that is why I brought that up. JMV, Caitlin brought me to the WNBA. I'm enjoying watching them. Good ball. Clark is fun to watch. Lexi is a good player, too. I miss the games when the season is over. It is very interesting how it, especially Caitlin Clark, that phenomenon continues to roll. We wondered about it. Now, again, this is before everything really, truly has started, but, as you've seen, it does seem like it's remaining the same right here. And no question about it. The Sun and the Fever, this is an important one. We'd like to see the Fever get back on track. What Pat say? Last 11 games they've lost? Is that what it was? It's a lot. Now, certainly no success against the Sun this year. Sun, one of the better teams out there. And then got an all-star during the Olympic break. So it is going to be tough as hell, but it is a game that at home you would love to see them get. That's on Bally Sports Indiana with Pat Boylan, good friend of the show who was with us a little bit earlier. That podcast at 1075thefan.com. How to win today in this era of college football with a new playoff and the ramifications, right? NIL, the transfer portal. Armin Katayan's going to join us. He has a book regarding that and then some. Armin going to join us coming up here at the top of the hour. Hey, by the way, tomorrow on the road, Eagle Creek Golf Course with our friends from the NHRA. And I'll explain a little bit further during the course of the show on the 5 o'clock hour. But a lot of guests, Love to see you out there coming up tomorrow. Dan Orlovsky of ESPN is going to join us coming up in the 3 o'clock hour as well. Mike Chappell on the 5, but I'm assuming because there will be a lot from the world of NHRA out there that probably a lot of conversations happen with that in mind too, because you have coming up here this weekend the Super Bowl of drag racing. It is the Eric Medlin Memorial Golf Tournament brought to you by Lucas Oil. So we'll be out there tomorrow. Should be a great time. For more, too, it's ericmedlinmemorial.com. You can check it out. But many in the world of NHRA will be out there. I've heard Tony Stewart's out there. I think Antron Brown's going to be out there. Morgan Lucas. All coming up tomorrow. Be a good day to be out at Eagle Creek. Quick break. We shall return. Armin Katayan, about 15 minutes away, the former CBS sideline guy from The Athletic and a scribe in a latest book. Actually, 2 in the past year. Very interesting. One on sports wagering and this one on how you win in this world of college football, this era of college football. Armin Katayan coming up at the top of the hour. Sit right there. AAA Membership Lounge via YouTube Live at 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Oh, good one, the late Jerry Rafferty. I mentioned tomorrow, Eagle Creek Golf Course, with the guys from NHRA and Dan Orlovsky, Mike Chappell coming up tomorrow. Friday, it is the start of the Labor Day weekend bender with Heaven Hill Distillery, Mystic Waters Campground, and Ford's Garage with the food. That is coming up on Friday. By the way, Friday's going to be great because you'll have the afternoon show, and I'll go through, obviously, 7 o'clock and the Colts happy hour. And then Brent's going to have a band at Mystic Waters for all of us. I think some are going to go to see Hagar. Like Ryan Nally, for example, he hit me up with a text. They're going to go see Hagar and Loverboy, but we're going to be hanging out there before and after. So that is coming up on Friday at Mystic Waters Campground. If you don't know where that might be, I know that you've seen it. It is right off of I-69, the Pendleton exit. You know, all those cabins right there. And last check, I do believe that they had cabins available for Friday. You may want to check on that right now. That was a couple of days ago. No cabins available for the JMV takeover and the All Request Saturday night. That's going to be live there on Saturday. No cabins available for that, but there may be a cabin or two remaining for Friday. But that's our entire weekend. And a shout out to J-Law, who may end up taking us over to his nearby cement pond at some point, which is very nice of him. So, no, we're going to have a hell of a weekend. Hopefully you choose to spend that weekend with us. And that really does begin tomorrow at Eagle Creek. Tomorrow, Friday, and Saturday. The Labor Day weekend bender is going to be absolutely spectacular. James, before I hit the top of the hour, Armin Katan's going to join us for about 15 minutes. How many slots do we have left for the Fantasy Football League?
We still have about 4 slots open right now.
4 slots. So do we need to give one away? A little jump ball action at number 9 at 239-1070 right now, you think?
Yeah, let's do it.
This is going for the bar restock, courtesy of Heaven Hill Distillery. You got to be 21 years of age to participate here. But we're doing our usual thing. And remember, if you don't get into our 12-team fantasy football league, we'll have a pick'em. Our station has a pick'em, too, that Joe Koppel put together as well. So there's going to be plenty of opportunities for you to compete against us. And plenty of prizes. Is that who I think it is right there? That's awesome. Little number 9 jump ball right there. And this, again, is for our league where you construct your own team. And James has put this together. Well, thank you very much, James, for that. JMV, regarding Cafe Pizzeria, I preferred Mother Bear's back in the day. Bloomington had a lot of good places. Loved hanging at Flying Tomato. Listen, I love Mother Bear still. Oh, my all-time favorite's Garcia's, and that's Joe and, what's his name? Is it Mike and Joe? The Flying Tomato Brothers of Garcia's. There's still a location in Champaign, Illinois. I love Garcia's. Weird. They always described it as Las Vegas-style pizza, and I never really understood what that was. But it was awesome. The Gut Buster at Garcia's, there was absolutely nothing like it. Now, if you're wondering what I'm talking about, Garcia's was in the place where Buffalo's is located now. So you can imagine just how iconic, again, I'm using that term, how iconic that venue is off of Indiana. But true story. Yeah, I love Mother Bear's. Cafe Pizzeria done after 70 years. That is incredibly sad. But I was a tremendous fan of Garcia's. That will go down in history for me. Yeah, everybody kind of asking me, so you're going to hold Chris Ballard to the standard of cutting a late-round selection when you prop him up for being one of these great evaluators of talent, you know, whether it's blue chip, as Jim Irsay said, and when you trade down because you value late-round picks, you don't cut 6 in the last 2 years. And listen, that is open to be criticized. It just is. All of this is open to be criticized. Until further notice, until they win, until they show results, that's exactly the type of tact you should take. So, yeah. Okay, I know. Oftentimes, late round selections don't make it, but you're often conditioned around here to believe there is a method behind the trade down madness. Right, if you're going to pat it on the back for those moments, you got to be critical of it in the other moments where it didn't work. Well, you can be a fan and wave the pom-poms all you want, but you got to be fair about this. And we are. Do I need a break here? Armin Katan for about 15 on the other side. A little college football conversation. Skinner tickets as well on deck in the 5 o'clock hour. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
The Ride with JMV.
Remember, mum is the word.
Certainly, but
Mum.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
If you missed it yesterday, Danny O'Neal, who's a true freshman starter. Remember, he started out at Colorado, then his head coach Sean Lewis got out of Boulder. Got into that conversation yesterday a little bit. Ended up with a head coaching gig at San Diego State. Now it's a rebuild, but the former Cathedral High School standout, Danny O'Neill, was awesome on the show yesterday. He will be the opening week starter as a true freshman for the Aztecs of San Diego State. If you missed it, the podcast, 1075thefan.com. Tomorrow, Eagle Creek NHRA in town. We got that. Dan Orlovsky on the show tomorrow, as I mentioned, too. And Friday, we go back-to-back at Mystic Waters Campground. It's our Labor Day weekend bender. This show is live on Friday, and it's going to be a blast. And then the JMV Takeover, all requests Saturday night on B105.7 on Saturday night. Live again from Mystic Waters Campground. That's off I-69 in Pendleton. Coming up this weekend. Maybe another opportunity for you in fantasy football coming up as well, and certainly tickets to give away. Meantime, on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline, very familiar name involving sports, certainly in all of our sports viewing lives, and is a part of a book called The Price, What It Takes to Win in College Football's Era of Chaos. Let's welcome to the show, just for a variety of reasons, former CBS, a part of The Athletic, and just an all-around great sports voice. Armen Keteyian joins us now. Hey, Armen, thank you for the time. How are you?
I'm good, John. How are you? And thanks for that Aztec update, because I went to San Diego State, so now I know who their starting quarterback is.
Danny O'Neill, Armen, is a solid kid and was fantastic around here. And it's interesting to see. You don't often see a lot of true freshmen start in college football. And I think there was a little bit, you mentioned chaos in the title of this book. I think there was a little bit of chaos in Boulder upon that particular exodus, as there remains right now with Coach Prime. And it's interesting to see him get that starting nod at San Diego State. So good, man.
Be good for us.
Yeah, good for you. You will like him a great deal. All right, let's start here on the ground level. What, as just such a longtime sports fan and somebody that's covered it in all areas, what is your viewpoint of college football compared to the way that it used to be?
Well, I think it's never been more popular. Certainly now with the expanded playoffs and 12 teams getting into the hunt to be a national champion, it's really opened the door for more excitement and more controversy. That's the good side. On the other side, I think, there's a reason that we use that word chaos in the subtitle of the book. I don't think it's been more chaotic or more unsettled than it is right now. And I mean, you're at the epicenter there in Indy with the national office for the NCAA. And I don't think anybody, including, Charlie Baker, has a clear picture of what the future of big-time college sport is going to be. I know Charlie's got an idea for a framework, and he's working with people to try to create solutions. But right now, it's just the wild, wild west. It really is, because they're just every rule or guardrail that the NCAA puts in place, there's either a challenge in court or there's an interpretation as to what's an inducement in NIL versus what's a legitimate commitment to sign with the program. So it's just nuts. I mean, John Talty and I spent the better part of 2 years riding this speeding freight train that really most of the time, and still I think, has no idea where the destination is. So from a storytelling perspective, when you have a landscape like college football and the excitement and the passion associated with it, that's great for us as storytellers. There were days where we were pulling our hair out too, because it was just nonstop, all the changes.
It's Armen Keteyian, and again, we'll talk about the book in terms of college football, and in part of the book, you talk about Nick Saban's final year in college football. Obviously, now covering college football. And one of the reasons why is because of that ever-changing world. And Armen, you go back to college basketball And he's great on CBS, but, the significant reason why Jay Wright is no longer a coach at Villanova in college basketball was because of a similar evolution. Are we going to still consistently view these top-level coaches deciding to go someplace else because what is going on right now with their respective sport is just not something they want to be a part of in the future?
I think you're absolutely right. I think if you look at what happened we could start with Nick. I've known Nick since he was the head coach of the Dolphins. I profiled him for 60 Minutes. He was a major figure in the system, the book that Jeff Benedict and I did about the state of college football back in 2013, which looks like child's play compared to what we were dealing with and are dealing with right now. I think there's no question that Nick's decision to retire was based on the fact, that he had lost the one thing that was at the heartbeat of his entire organization, which is control. When you lose to Michigan, as he did in the Rose Bowl in the college football playoffs, the Alabama team, the Crimson Tide, and he comes back from a brief vacation down in Florida, and his office, when he walks in that day, there was one player after another lined up, and they're not lined up because they want to talk about what to do in the off-season program to get better. They're lined up because they're telling Coach Saban that, if they don't get more NIL money, they're going to head into the portal. And that just drives Nick crazy. It drove him crazy. So, and I know Terry said to him, his wife Terry said, what are we doing here? Why are we doing this? So for 50 years, Nick had it one way, starting in, Toledo and working his way through Michigan State and LSU, and finally, the Dolphins to Alabama. He's always had it one way. Well, it wasn't Nick's way anymore. It's the player's way. It's the athlete's way right now, and that's really hard for a lot of these coaches to take. And you look at, not only Jay Wright but Chip Kelly out at UCLA. He leaves $4 million on the table to leave Los Angeles to go to Ohio State. To be the offensive coordinator, principally because he didn't want to deal with all the BS that he was dealing with out in LA. So I think you're going to see more and more coaches, and there's a reason this book is called The Price. It's not just the financial price associated, the billions of dollars that have poured into college football. But it's the emotional price. It's the physical and psychological toll that is being taken every single day, 365 days a year now, in these major college programs. And, it's really difficult to sustain, particularly when it comes to having any kind of home life.
It's Armin Katayan and the book, The Price, What It Takes to Win in College Football's Era of Chaos. And he joins us to explain even further on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. You're going exclusive behind the scenes with the University of Michigan. Jim Harbaugh, who is in L.A. with the Chargers now, beating the posse out of Ann Arbor, what was left behind, where he's going, and all of this. What would seem, and you brought this up, you go back a decade or two, and you go, oh, my goodness. But in this era of college football, it's almost become, oh, by the way, Armin.
Yeah, no question. I think, Jim, it's a really interesting, there's 3 chapters on Michigan, and I wrote those and reported those. And really at the heart of it is, in the end, Jim found himself really squeezed or caught between a university he really loves. He's a Michigan man, true and blue, maize and blue. And I know he turned down, before the championship season, he turned down what was described as Walmart money not to take the head coaching job in Denver so he could return with this band of brothers that they had to try to win a national title. So on one hand, he has this great love for the university. And then on the other hand, he's getting squeezed by a process, an investigative enforcement process that is really he hates. And Tom Mars, his attorney, was a very how would I describe Tom? A formidable advocate for any college coach or player, and he's got a long history with enforcement and the Committee on Infractions. And Jim, time and time again, professed his innocence as to this, these meetings that he supposedly had during the COVID-19 dead period with recruits and their family. And in the end, and I know the enforcement people well. I know John Duncan, the vice president of enforcement. I find him to be a man of great integrity, who's trying to do the right thing. And I know the enforcement staff, investigators, who are good people doing a very difficult job, an almost thankless job on a day-to-day basis. But I think in the case with Jim, it was more the Committee on Infractions. And I think it was the chairman, Dave Roberts, who had put a target on Jim's back and clearly made it known through both Tom Mars and some of the decisions that the committee had made that they wanted more. They wanted more out of Jim Harbaugh, and they believed Jim was lying. And, we witnessed the most recent sanctions. I mean, to get a 4-year show cause penalty, that's a statement. That's not just about Jim Harbaugh. That's sending a message through Jim Harbaugh that we believed you were lying to the committee. We believed that you were, and I'm looking at it right here. I'm just going to get this language because it's so that there was unethical conduct and a failure to cooperate, and you provided false or misleading information. And those words are defined by the NCAA in their dictionary. They're open to interpretation in a great way, and I think when they make those kinds of allegations against you, you really almost have no recourse because it's their dictionary, as I said. So, when you have a college football season that's about to open, that opened last week but gets really serious this weekend, without Jim Harbaugh and without Nick Saban, arguably the two singular figures in the sport, it tells you a great deal about the price that's being extracted from these coaches and to return to a game that right now I think doesn't have any real clear idea where it's headed.
Yeah, it's Armand Catan with us. I was going to ask you this, just opinion-oriented. Where do you think we're going? I'm going to tell you this, Armand, too, regarding, the chaos and what goes on regarding NIL or the transfer portal. I think there are many that believe out there that that those added layers of conversation and debate are meaningful and something that many want around this game and never want to be without this game, thus welcoming in that level of chaos that to many of us is unnecessary because we just love the game. Do you believe that to be true?
Well, I think you have to look at the history, here. It's really the kind of thing, John, that there's an old proverb, you reap what you sow, and you don't have to look too long or too hard to see what the history of the NCAA was in terms of athletes attempting to get a piece of the pie, the laborers, so to speak, the workers in the field trying to share in the riches. And time again, in one court case after another, going back decades, the NCAA decided, the membership decided, the association decided to fight in court and to spend millions of dollars to be defeated one time after another, to be called by a lower court in New Mexico in a case, a classic cartel, to end up in front of the Supreme Court after the O'Bannon lawsuit and then the Alston lawsuit and then the House lawsuit, to end up with a 9-0 decision in July of 2021 that says you're in violation of the Sherman Antitrust Act and you have purposely suppressed wages. That's the reason we're here right now. I mean, a senior official at the NCAA in the headquarters when I was out there doing interviews and stuff said to me, we had an ample opportunity time and time again to take the air out of this inflated tire. That's what he called it, this inflated tire. And we just chose not to do it. And, this is the collateral damage. This is the aftermath of that. And yes, it's about time the athletes, when you're talking about tens of billions of dollars, it's about time the athletes got to share it. How this is being shared and the revenue sharing formulas, and now you throw in the collectives and you throw in NIL and you throw in the portal and you throw in massive realignment. I mean, it's dizzying at times. And from a storytelling perspective, as I said, when you can get behind the scenes of that kind of stuff, as John and I did, and you can see it through the eyes of the college presidents and the collectives and the NCAA and athletic directors and the athletes themselves, it really brings it to life. And it's there's no clear solutions in sight. I give Charlie Baker, the president of the NCAA, a great deal of credit for being out front on this and being very pragmatic and very honest about the need for change. The big question is there's so much self-interest right now. There's so many people worried about their own programs or their own conference. Will they decide to put that aside for the greater good? And I think that's still a very big open question.
Yeah, there's an old saying, and I know you have to go here, about never being able to put the toothpaste back in the tube of toothpaste. That's where we are, it seems, right here.
Yeah, and it's getting messy. And thank God, there are still people that love this sport, and there's great fans everywhere. And I know it's going to be a wildly entertaining weekend again. But, people have to roll up their sleeves here. And I give Charlie and I give Bobby Robbins, who we profile, the president of the University of Arizona, and Tony Petitti, who's in Chicago, and Greg Sankey, the commissioner of the SEC. I give them credit for trying to do something, but you're not going to get help from Congress. We make that clear in the interviews that we did. Somehow, some way, the thought leaders and the stakeholders in college football, because that's the driving force here, are going to have to get together and put their own self-interest on the side and work for a greater good, or you're going to see, I think, a cataclysmic series of events that are really going to, act as almost the Oppenheimer effect on certainly the programs lesser than the the blue bloods and the power, let's say, 30, in the country.
Well, we're just scratching the surface in this book, and I wouldn't mind to get you on further in the college football season to get back into it.
Anytime. I'd love to talk to you.
I know you got to run here. The demise of the Pac-12, and this is the one thing, not now, but for later. This is a longer-term tease. The whole Jimmy Sexton influence, I've got to get into with you sometime, if you don't mind.
Sexton stories for you. Yeah, that'd be great.
I do. Well, and speaking of stories, Danny O'Neil, true freshman, Cathedral for your San Diego State Aztecs. Check him out and see what you think.
Thanks for the heads up. I appreciate it, John.
Armin, thank you very much. Armin Katayan right there. I wish we'd have had more time. We'll make more time a little bit later on. The price, what it takes to win in college football's era of chaos. That was a lot of good stuff right there. And we left a lot on the table. I've said this, and I try to keep this as simple as possible. Because believe me trying to what people like to call navigating in the world of smarts, real good gymnastics is just not me and is not where I live. And I thought that Armin brought this up about as well as you could in longer form this is where we are, and you're either going to enjoy it the way that it is and accept the ever-changing nature of it, and I know some of you won't, and especially the older generational folks won't. And believe me, I'm a part of you. Problem that I have is I like it too much. It's like with basketball. You can really do what you want, and I'm still going to watch. I say this in a much lower level term of when I make fun of NBA officiating. Yeah, you know what? I'm shaking my fist and I'm mad about it. And this stinks and that stinks. But I'm still watching because I love it. And it's not just because of this is where I could sit here 3 hours a day and talk about anything that was meaningless. I mean, anything meaningful, and I would struggle. But I could sit here all day and give you 3 hours of content beyond that. But it's just a love and it's an interest, and it's who I am. And I will probably tag along with most of you with whatever direction this ends up going. But make no mistake, the direction that it will not go is backwards. It will not moonwalk. And you're going to have to be willing to accept, I'm assuming, a lot of things that you never thought you would have to accept just because you love it. Yeah, next time I got to get into the betting aspect, too. I know we only had 15 minutes. Man, I was hustling ass right there. I was going, stuff I wanted to know. We'll get him back on again. Maybe reach out to them, and we'll do that again at some point. I had no idea. I guess I should have asked or done a little bit more in-depth in research that he attended San Diego State, so that was interesting with Danny O'Neill on the show yesterday. Armin Kitsayan, once again, on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. He brings out the best in conversation. I just saw this. Our friend Rick Simler, who works over at Channel 2, WTWO, outside of Terre Haute and Farmersburg. You do know this, right? Indiana State. And I need to reach out. If anybody can reach out, because I'd have to look it up and send him a text. I need to get Kurt on the show. Of course, Kurt Mallory's the Indiana State football coach. Indiana State opens up Saturday on the road at Purdue. Did you know, I saw this from Rick Simler a couple of hours ago, and MK was kind enough to send me this as well with the caption, "You saw this, question mark, holy smokes." Sycamore football, James, will earn $500,000 for their game Saturday at Purdue. And according to Rick Simler over in Terre Haute, that matches the largest payout for ISU ever in a game. And if there's anybody that needs it, they do. All the way around. And again, they need it, and hopefully they're doing something smart with it. They need so much help. And see, what they need to do is they need to put some advertising dollars into the show and have me, and I'm not talking about sports, but have me actively recruit students for academics to Terre Haute. They just need more of an enrollment. And I know that there's an enrollment slide in a lot of places and a lot of schools around the country, but really nothing more profound than what has happened over the last handful of years in Terre Haute. Let me sell that to people, please. I try all the time anyway. $500,000 is what they will be paid. The Indiana State Sycamores to go play football against Purdue this weekend. Now, that wasn't necessarily what we just had with Armin Kitsayan a conversation about. Certainly more of a broader stroke right there with all of college football. The Saban stuff and the right stuff is interesting because you accomplish at such a high level of winning and, elite level of coaching. And then you say, maybe not in your prime, but still at the very elite level, the top of your game. You say, yeah, you know what, I'm going to step away because this stuff all wears you out. As you get older as a sports fan with your collegiate athletics, you may find that happening on a much smaller scale of how you take it and how you enjoy watching it. You may find that happening to you. Now, I can already tell you it'd be a struggle for me, but you may find that happening to you one of these days. All right, quick break. We'll come back. 239-1070. We got the Harris Hoosier Park race of the day coming up in just a little bit. 50-50 betting and dining. That's what we got for you to the winner today. So we'll line you up and race coming up in about 15 minutes or so. Got the Colts Daily Update. So what they did today is get practice squad guys. New name on the 53-man defensively in the secondary, which will probably make some of you happy, I would guess. We'll get to that. And the words of Chris Ballard a little bit earlier today as he met with the media talking about the upcoming season and the decisions that were made for, as it stands right now, the 53-man Colts roster. That's still to come. Your calls at 239-1070. I have time for that. And maybe, just maybe, another space, another slot, if you will, into our fantasy football league. Our bar restock, courtesy of Heaven Hill Distillery, maybe before the end of this show, and that Colts Daily Update coming up at the top of the hour. Don't go anywhere. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
Sir, there's been a little problem in the cockpit.
The cockpit? What is it?
It's the little room in the front of the plane where the pilots sit. That's not important right now.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Armin Catan was really good. That podcast at 1075thefan.com. James over there, I'm John. Big weekend coming up. Actually, we start early tomorrow at Eagle Creek Golf Course with members of the NHRA and the Eric Medlin Memorial that is going on over there. More information during the show tomorrow, too. We should have a lot of guests for that. Dan Orlovsky on the show tomorrow of ESPN. Mike Chappell, normally on that Thursday, is going to be with us again. So that's at Eagle Creek Golf Club tomorrow. You know, Carl's going out with us tomorrow. Carl is Tony Katz's producer. Carl is going out with us, I think, as part of promotions. And I was riding in the elevator with Carl.
Carl Showbiz?
Carl Showbiz.
There you go.
I was in the elevator with Showbiz, and Showbiz would not stop asking me how to get there. And I go, Showbiz, would you just Google this and shut up? Come on, Showbiz. Well, how do I get there? You could tell me. Don't you know? I go, can you Google it, Showbiz?
Do you not have a smartphone with Google Maps on it?
He was just messing with me. We love Showbiz. That is tomorrow. That is tomorrow, then Friday, Mystic Waters Campground for what is going to be a very eventful Labor Day weekend bender with me at Mystic Waters Campground. So more on that coming up as well. Good times to be had by all. And in fact, I cannot wait for this weekend. It is going to be an absolute blast. Thank you very much. Fever later on tonight versus the Sun. We talked to Pat Boylan, who's got that broadcast a part of Bally Sports Indiana tonight with the Sun and the Fever. The Fever zero results against the Sun forever. To see them reverse that trend this evening, that is something you can watch again on Bally Sports Indiana. Pat Boylan a little bit earlier, that podcast, I should say, at 1075thefan.com. And Kevin Bowen also a little bit earlier on the show. A couple of questions. One is this. JMV, I saw you went to see Pearl Jam on Monday night. That was a band you had never seen. Who is somebody or a band you have never seen that you really want to and are afraid maybe you'll never get that opportunity? That's a hell of a question you're asking right there, Bob. Bob, I'm going with my first answer. This is like the match game. I'll go with my first thought, my first answer. Because if I got more in depth, I could probably come up with like 20. And I'm assuming, Bob, we're talking in the realm of still with us, still living, still heartbeat, all that. Maybe even to a degree still performing. But I think, unfortunately, in mine, not. My first thought on this, Bob, to answer your question, was Phil Collins. Because I believe Phil Collins is now called it at least performing live career. I never saw Phil Collins either with Genesis or solo, and I could kick my own ass for that. Because there is so much. And so much, it's almost like, I think of it in terms of basketball. And I'll give this relation to you. Back when I was growing up, Larry Bird all the time. Larry Bird, Indiana State. Larry Bird, Boston. Larry Bird comes to Indiana to play the Pacers. It is all about Larry Bird at Market Square Arena. Larry Bird, Larry Bird, Larry Bird. I go back, and I grew up about 40 minutes from French Lick, 45 minutes or so from French Lick. Obviously, Indiana State, not too far down the road, inundated with Larry Bird. Larry Bird had his basketball camp back when I was in elementary in the 3rd grade down in French Lick. I did not appreciate enough at the time Larry Bird because he was it. That's all anybody ever talked about. So I would gravitate, not to Magic Johnson, but to Dr. J. I always went to Pacer games to see Julius Erving and the 76ers. And kind of the same holds true with Phil Collins. Phil Collins, come here, be a part of Genesis. Come here, be a part of Phil Collins. No jacket required. The 80s into the 90s, just incredible shows. And for whatever reason, I never went to one. And I believe we have missed that point in time now. And to me, that stinks. So, Bob, to answer your question in long form right there, it would be Phil Collins. And that's the first musician, first artist, whether group or solo, that I thought of. See, for example, I saw Peter Gabriel once, and that was pretty awesome. But I never saw Phil Collins in any form or fashion, and that is incredibly regretful. From Frank Lucas, and not the former mob boss, if you've ever watched American Gangster. Have you ever watched American Gangster with Denzel Washington?
With Denzel? Oh, yeah.
Frank Lucas.
Great
this
movie.
Is a different Frank Lucas right here. It's a great. See, we do agree on that. I love that.
Yeah.
God, I love that movie.
I just love Denzel. I just love him in a lot of things.
I love when he's getting out of prison in 1991, and the gate is going up when he's getting out of prison, and Public Enemy's Can't Trust It's playing in the background. I think it's awesome. I believe that is a Ridley Scott motion picture, is it not? Did Ridley Scott direct that? One of the reasons why it's so good. Different Frank Lucas right here. Shout out to the Wasted Talents Football League Fantasy Draft going down tonight. Hey, by the way, when we fill up our league, our fantasy draft, did you really set this up for Sunday night?
I haven't set it in stone or anything.
Okay.
I just figured we'd
Last
do it
Sunday
then.
night, I was a complete wreck. I had to push back Fox 59 to like 8 o'clock and everything. You saw me in the dark. I was a wreck. I was ravaged. So hopefully I'm going to be around for that on Sunday night. But a shout-out to the Wasted Talents Football League Fantasy Draft going down with Frank Lucas later on tonight. JMV, glad you saw Pearl Jam in 2000 as a young kid. I snuck backstage at Deer Creek and briefly got to meet them as they played pinball. That's pretty awesome. That is a legendary, again, a generational band, and Vetter gets all the headlines, but Mike McCready, and this should not be sneaky, this is just the way that it is one of the greatest guitarists of all time. He just is. Now, he may not get that type of credit if you're thinking up a list of guitarists, but McCready is and absolutely should be right there. That's pretty cool. I think he showed that as to what we saw on Monday night for the first time in 14 years, which was pretty amazing. JMV, every dude in our peer group put Against All Odds on a mixtape for a chick. Take a look at me now. That's one of those cases where the song and the soundtrack was much better than the film. Go ahead and think about that amongst yourselves right now. The song highlight from the soundtrack was a hell of a lot better than the film. If you remember, the film had Jeff Bridges, James Woods, and Rachel Ward. But the soundtrack song, the title track was much better than the film. Against All Odds. And see, that's what Phil Collins in the 80s was going through some junk. Going through some junk back then. And you could tell because he went ahead and put all that junk in. Like they talk about with Taylor Swift putting all of her personal stuff in her songs. Hey, I'm telling you what, the wizard at that was Phil Collins in the 80s. Everything he was going through. Divorce, family life. It was all, I don't care anymore. All that stuff was put into song by music. 239-1070 is the number. I got a couple on hold right here. Derek's going to join us next. Hello, Derek. How are you?
Hey, JMV. How are you doing today?
Derek, I'm fantastic. Thank you for the call.
Hey, I know that Chris Ballard doesn't like you, but he really hates Kevin Bowen, doesn't he?
Could you tell? Was there some bad, negative energy interaction going on today?
Oh, he always gives him a negative shout out about wide receivers. Every time I heard it on the press conference today.
Oh, so what did he say? What did he say in response today?
It's always freaking Bowen. Bowen wasn't even asking about wide receivers, but it's always you guys always ask me about wide receivers. Now we have wide receivers like freaking Bowen a couple years ago.
Oh, he was talking about. He was probably talking about Alec Pierce because he said Alec Pierce. Did he say Alec Pierce had arguably the best camp of any Colts player? I think today.
Oh yeah. One other quick thing. I just want to give a shout out to my Jannard Avery. I was hoping he would make the team. He made the practice squad.
He did.
He graduated from my high school. Give a shout out to Grenada High School, Grenada, Mississippi.
Gotcha.
I graduated with his uncle, Chris Avery, in the year 1993.
1993 with his uncle.
Yeah, with his uncle, and he has a nephew. His uncle played in the Canadian League. His name is Chris Avery, and I think they have another nephew or two that is either really good in college or is in the league. So it's a family of eight.
Where's Grenada, Mississippi on the map?
If you go about an hour south of Memphis, Tennessee, straight down Highway 55, you're running straight into Grenada, Mississippi.
I've been down that path before. I think actually back when you're 1993.
1993.
Spring break tour as I was doing radio for the Indiana State Sycamore baseball team, and we went down that way. Actually, I think we stopped in Jackson as they practiced, and then we went on to New Orleans to play the Privateers, and then went to Baton Rouge to get tuned up by LSU and Mike Sorotka, the former White Sox pitcher. True story.
Now, if you went to Jackson, Mississippi, you drove straight through. If you blinked, you probably missed Grenada, Mississippi.
I know. We were right through. I'm at 55, right down through there. We know where you're growing. We weren't that far from one another back in 1993.
And one other thing, I was messing with James when I was on hold. What do we app users have to do to get in this league? Because every time we hear about it, we're on a 15-second delay.
Yeah, I know, man. I know. What do you think about James? Do we need to give somebody a fair shot at
all
this?
over Twitter.
James, jump on board here, James. Get your 2 cents of input in.
James, did you see my Jodeci reference I tweeted at you today?
I did not. I'll have to go through.
I missed a Jodeci reference today? Was it Come and Talk to Me?
Baby, I'm begging on there. Come and talk to me.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I've been.
That's beautiful right there.
I always use that. My notifications.
I always use that by other means, but that's okay. James, you got any ideas what Derek can do?
Well, if you've retweeted the post we put out, that's probably the best way right now, just because I'm randomly going through who's retweeted and
he's on the app and he's 15 seconds behind, and he believes that to be a detriment.
Well, when
I call in, it's already done.
Yeah, when he calls in, that's an issue. But we've only given away 2 spots through the call. Everything else has been on Twitter. So if you've retweeted it and you said you tweeted out me with a Jodeci reference, I can go through my Twitter and potentially you'll get lucky.
Oh, you never know, Derek. You never know. The pride of Grenada, Mississippi, 1993 with the Avery family.
Yeah, I'll see you Friday.
You got it, buddy.
I'll be out there.
Can't wait, Derek. Thank you very much. Hey, do I have time to get to Eric's Phil Collins story? Hey, Eric at 239-1070. Jump on here with this Phil Collins story.
John, how are you this afternoon?
Eric, thank you very much for calling.
Well, I'll tell you what. You see these polls all the time on social media and elsewhere. What's the worst concert that you've ever seen in your life?
Right.
And I immediately have to put Genesis as that answer because back in the mid-'80s, I think maybe 1986, Genesis played the Hoosier Dome.
Okay.
At that time.
That was the Invisible Touch Tour, right?
Yeah, they were all that at that point in time. Yeah. Everything was big, but they played the stadium with a arena setup, and it was just god awful. The sound was pathetic. Everything sounded like crap.
Really?
It was just awful. And the worst part about it was later that year, I think that was in January, but later in the summer of that year, they did a damn stadium tour where they would have had all the big PA and the sound system and everything. But, man, you don't go into the Hoosier Dome with a setup for the Vogue and hope you're going to sound good. It was awful.
Was that the last time that they were here, when Genesis was here?
I couldn't say, but maybe. It might have been.
I'm going to ask Steve Girardi, who is noted concert historian here in Central Indiana, about that. But that's an interesting concept, because maybe if that is what you witnessed, what you heard, that you wouldn't be compelled to be thrilled about Genesis or Phil Collins after that, I guess, right?
I was to go, but you still hear all the good songs and everything that's great about that. But it's an easy choice when somebody says, "What's the worst concert you ever saw?"
Oh, man. Yeah. Hey, Eric, I appreciate the input. 86 in the then Hoosier Dome for the Invisible Touch Tour. I love Tonight, by the way. Good album. Quick one, we'll come back. Final time with you. We got tickets to see Leonard Skinner and ZZ Top. And we've got the Colts update at the top of the hour. Matt Taylor returns with us right now. It's the Harrah's Hoosier Park race of the day.
Ride with JMV.
Now you listen here. He's not the Messiah. He's a very naughty boy. Now go away.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Well, your Harrah's Hoosier Park race of the day won by Lee Adams. Got to keep this up behind me, too. Bull Market, the winner, 28.20 on a $2 bet. The $2 exacta, 123. 50-cent trifecta, 74.60. Lee Adams is a good dude, by the way. I know him. 50-50 betting and dining from Harrah's Hoosier Park Racing and Casino in Anderson. It's the Harrah's Hoosier Park race of the day. Number 9 at 239-1070 can go see Skinnerd and ZZ Top in September at Ruoff. Again, that's number 9 at 239-1070. Now, the Where Are You Now? Check that. The Where Is It Now shoe of the day. And I just brought this up. I don't know who this tennis player is. U.S. Open, just won. He's the 6th seed. His last name is Rublev. And he is rocking a K-Swiss sponsorship. See if I know who this guy is. Andrei Rublev, the 6th seed. Moving on to the 3rd round. And he is rocking a, and I didn't know K-Swiss was still around. A K-Swiss sponsorship, which was founded back in 1966 in L.A. K-Swiss. Anybody out there ever have any K-Swiss gear? Is it now specific for tennis? Yes, it does have some other professional tennis player sponsorships. K-Swiss, the nearly forgotten about shoe manufacturer of the day. All right, Matt Taylor and I coming up at the top of the hour. Do we have time? I want to get Fulton's been on hold for a minute. Let me get Fulton really quick. Fulton, you got to go quick. What's up, buddy?
Hello, JMV.
Hello, Fulton. How are you? It was great to see your star status on Friday with us in Noblesville.
Yes, I did. I'm getting ready for my big audition tonight.
Your big audition?
For Bye Bye Birdie the musical.
You got it, buddy. Yeah, you'll knock it stiff.
I'm trying to think of a monologue that I can do. Do you have any ideas?
Well, do you, and I'll play off of that really quick. What were you thinking about going with?
I don't know. I don't know, like a funny one or something.
How about what is something that you like right now?
Oh my goodness. There's a lot of them I can.
You like? Well, no. How about Earth, Wind, and Fire? You like Earth, Wind, and Fire? Can you do a monologue about Earth, Wind, and Fire?
I could try.
Why don't you do that? Talk about Earth, Wind, and Fire and how they were one of the most influential bands, regardless of their genre, which is funk and R&B, one of the most influential bands of all time. You're really good at Earth, Wind, and Fire, and then cite their song of the late 70s, September, as the reason why, okay?
Yep, sounds good. And make sure you come to the show in November.
You got it, Fulton. Good to hear from you, buddy.
Good to hear you.
That is Fulton right there. I'm here to help. All right, James. Matt Taylor and I on the other side. Colts Daily Update. A lot of Chris Ballard conversation. That is coming up next. Eagle Creek tomorrow with you. That in the NHRA. Can't wait to see you then at 3 o'clock. Matt Taylor and I, the Colts Daily Update. Straight ahead. It's next.